Hi students, I hope you all are doing well. I'm here with another tutorial requests video. I'm going to be covering Project 6 in the front-end nanodegree, and the topic or request is where to start. I see there's 3 requests for Project 6, where to start, and overall walkthrough. So basically what I'm going to do is show you what I did when I did this project and some best practices and how to get it ready for submission. So first thing I'm going to do is come to the classroom and grab a copy of the starting code from Udacity's GitHub. Let me copy the link. I'm going to clone it to my desktop. So git clone, paste the link. It's cloning. Alright, so have it right here. Now I'm going to change directories into that folder. And then I'm going to do yarn install to install all of the dependencies. Installing all of the React dependencies. Also, another package we're going to need is React Router. You can easily go to Google and type in React Router npm. Let me just show you. And then you should look for npmjs.com. That's the node package registry. Look for React Router. If you come down to their note, you can see that if you're in the browser, you should install React Router DOM. If you're using React Native, you'd use React Router Native. Both will install React Router as a dependency. So since we're in the web, we're going to be using this one, right? So after you install that, you might want to look at their GitHub. And from their GitHub, you can see they have documentation right here, which will bring you to reacttraining.com/reactrouter. You would choose web. And this entire page will have examples of how to use React Router, shows you their philosophy, what kind of issues it addresses, and documentation on how to use the components that it comes with. For example, browser router, hash router, link, nav links, prompt, redirect, route, and so forth, right? And what I'm going to do also is follow along the rubric as far as what it needs in order to pass. Now, once the dependencies finish installing, I'll install React Router and I get you started. So in the meantime, as far as where to start and overall walkthrough, I guess I'll explain some of the key mindset or key points in being a developer. A big thing is making sure you have clean code and an organized project structure. And what I mean by that is you have separate folders for certain file types. You have everything organized into specific folders, and it's easier to follow things. You don't want to put too much code in one file if it can be abstracted to another file, and you just import it as needed. So we have all the dependencies installed. Let me install React Router DOM. Install that. It's installing and done, right? Now let's see where we at. Yarn start. Let's see what Udacity gave us. It's starting the development server. I'm on Windows, so I can press F12 in Chrome to open the DevTools. It's loading, compiling. All right, so here's how it looks. Okay, looks like that's working somewhat. We have pretty much a select. We have books. All right, so here's how it looks. Let's see what the code is for it. So when you create a React app, it has pretty much a source folder, public folder, and basic package information like the package JSON, the README, things that it comes with. Mainly, you'll be spending most of your time inside the source folder. This is where you put all of your code, all your assets. Now inside source, it comes with index.js. This is where React will mount your app to that public index.html. And inside app.js, this is usually the root of your application, right? Now, inside app.js, we have what Udacity gave us, the books app, and we have a lot of code here. Right? So where to start? It's important to have clean code and organized files. So the first thing I'm going to do is just clean up all of this code, right? Now in React, the main idea of components is that you write a certain set of JSX and like methods in the component that will manage itself, right? And one little tactic that I use of when to make a component is when things get repetitive, right? So for example, we see bookshelf, we see books inside the bookshelf, right? Multiple times over. And it's hard-coded into the page. So since I see this happening more than once or twice, we have 3 shelves and we have books on each shelf. And that number can be indefinite. We can add more shelves, just like, for example, in the future. Or we can have more books on a shelf. We don't want to have to hard code them, so we just abstract that away into a component. So what I'm going to do now is create a folder inside of source that will have all of my components in it. So let me call this components. Right? Now inside components, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have 2 main components that I'm going to call page components. So inside of components, I'm actually going to create another folder and call it pages. Now inside pages, I'm going to create a new file. This would be mainpage.js, and I'm also going to create searchpage.js. And the reason why I'm creating these page components is because that's what I'm going to mount on each route when I use React Router. So for example, we're at the root of the development server, so I'm going to call this the main page. We have a search page, so I'm going to create a component that represents this entire page, and it will be easier to manage what components use other components, just being as organized as I can. So inside components, I have pages, main page, search page. Now I see that there are shelves or multiple shelves, so I can abstract each shelf away as one component. So let me just create a shelf component, and then each shelf have books, so I'm going to create a book component, right? Now that I have all the components for this project, what I'm going to do is start cleaning up the app.js that we have. So let me go ahead and I'm using Atom. I'm going to split left. Well, actually, before I move all the code into its respective components, I'm going to go ahead and import browser router inside of the project so I can mount the pages to the routes. So I'm going to come to the documentation, import router as router, route from React Router DOM. So let me import, I'm going to copy this right here. This is reacttraining.com/reactrouter/web/API/route. Just for your information. And go ahead and import that here. Now, once you import browser router, you have to wrap it around the app component, the root, and this will allow you to use route components inside browser router. Let me go ahead and just clean it up for visibility purposes. All right, so I have browser router. I'm going to save that. You can see no errors. So far, so good, right? Now, inside the root, which is the app component, what I'm going to do is import route from React Router DOM. And what I'm going to do is, instead of all of this here, I'm going to return something else. So like I was saying earlier, I'm going to create pretty much page components, and that way it'll be easier to mount a specific page to a specific route, and it'll make the code look a lot clean. So I'm going to create a div. Now inside the div, I'm going to use React's, the route has a component prop, right? So let's say you have route. Instead of using render, I'm going to use component like this. That way I can just have one line and have everything inside of here, right? So let's say route, the exact path equals the root, which is just a / and component equals main page, right? Now I'm not going to need any state, so I'm going to delete that. Now let me import that main page. So this app.js is inside the source, and there's a components folder. So I'm going to do import main page from, in this directory we have a component folder. Inside of that, we have our pages folder, and then I'm going to import main page, right? Save that. Unreachable code. You can see we have an error because main page doesn't have anything. So let me go ahead and create a quick class main page extends react dot component, and we're just going to have a simple render method, and it's just going to return. Let's just do what? A p tag. Let's just say main. Oh yeah, let's export it. Export default main page. And we have it working, right? So instead of all of this markup all being like jumbled into this one app.js, I extracted it away to its own page component, and it's easier to read. You can simply do that for as much pages as you want. Let's do the same thing for the search page. So let's do search page. From search page, let's go ahead and do that for search page. Right? Let's save that. Save that. Save. Let's save this. Search page is not defined. Search page is not defined. Search page.js. Oh, yes, let's rename that search page. Okay, so that's working. Super expression must either be null or function, not undefined. Class search page extends react. Oh, my mistake. Alright, so we have these two routes. Let me just go ahead and change this to search. Alright, so far so good. Now, what I'm going to do is just move everything from the search page to the search component from here to here. So let's go ahead and do that. I guess this is the root. I'm going to copy that, paste it here. Go ahead and get rid of this. And instead of using a basic link tag, since we're using React Router, we have to use the, where is it? The link component. Provides declarative, accessible navigation around your application, right? So basically the same as a regular link tag, but for React Router. So let me go ahead and import that. Now, instead of this, let's go ahead and delete that. Change it from A to link. And according to the documentation, we need the to prop, which will be the path that we want to link to. So let me go ahead and add that. From the search page, I want to link back to the root. right? Now, that looks good. Go ahead and save that. Let's go back to the main page. Well, before I go back to the main page, let's try it out. If I were to go to search, that works. If I were to click this, it goes back. So that works, right? We successfully moved all of this into its own component. Now let's go ahead and do the same for the main page, which is all of this right here. So from here all the way, this is a lot of code. I think it's this. So let me go ahead and copy all of this because this bit right here. All right, so let me paste that here. All right, so that works, right? We're gonna need to fix this little link button right here, which is all the way here at the bottom. I'm gonna have to fix that. So link on click. We don't want that. We just want to search, and that should still work. Link is not defined. Let's go ahead and import that. Save that. So we have the router working, right? React router, that's working. So now I can get rid of all of this mess right here. Right? And inside the app component, all we have is this simple div with the route components. And we have main page mounted to this path, search page mounted to this path. So we saved a lot of lines inside this one file by just separating and organizing our code. We can easily see that this path has this component that will manage it, right? Easy to find based on our structure. Now that we have our code organized, we actually have a little bit of organizing to do. So we have these shelves and we have these shelf component here. So what I'm going to do is just move, let's say, one shelf. So 1, 2, 3, going 3 in, right? So where's the next shelf? I think it's this all the way. Let's try this. What if I were to cut that? No? What if I did all this? No? Huh. Actually, maybe it was that. Let me copy all of this. No? So the first shelf we have is list books. So we have what? 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 divs in. 2, 3, 4. Let me try this. Okay, I think that's about right. Alright, so I have that. Let me go ahead and move that to its own shelf component. I'm just going to paste it here temporarily. Let me just I'm going to copy this, or rather this. So let me go ahead and create this shelf. Export shelf. We have the link component from React Router. I'm going to go ahead and copy all of this. And just move that inside the render method. I save that. And for a book, let's take one of the list items. Okay. This is really hard to read. Okay, we're gonna fix all these red lines as soon as I get a few things in order. Class book extends React component. We have this, that. I'm going to create one list item. Replace all of this with this, right? So we have this book component. We have this shelf component here, right? Now, so far so good. Let's refresh the page. All right, so in the main page, instead of having all of these shelves, right, we can simply import the shelf component. Import, actually no, we're going to import default. So we can do shelf from, we're inside the main page and the shelf is one level top. So we're going to do // to go one level up, and then shelf, right? Now we know inside of shelves we have books. So let me go ahead and add that import statement here. Import book from book. It's in the same folder. Save that. Let's test it out. You have shelf. And it works, right? You have a shelf. If you were to do it, let's say like 2, 3 more times, we have shelves, right? 1, 2, 3. So we have everything organized, everything in its own little component. Now that we have everything organized, let's go ahead and pull in the information from the API. Because right now everything is hard-coded, but we need to interact with the API. And if we look inside app, they have it commented out. So let me go ahead and, we don't need this here. Let me go ahead and add it to main page and comment it out. Now this is in the same level as app.js. So we're inside pages. You go to up 1, up 2. So let's do that. Import all as books API. Save that. So far so good, right? Now when we come to the main page, when the component mounts, component did mount, what do I want to do? Well, I want to load all the books that we are currently reading. So if we look inside of Books API, we can see Udacity gave us a method called getAll, right? It's just going to use arrow function and return a request for API books and give us back that data. So if we call that once the page is loaded via the component did mount method dot get all, but then we get our books. We can log books and see what we have. Well, I'm going to change the name to response just so I know that this is from an AJAX request. That's just how I like to do things. And we can see we start off with 7 books, or maybe some start off with different amounts, but based on my browser and my local storage token, I have 7 books, right? Now, I'm going to create a constructor method and the reason why I'm doing that is so we can have some starting books state. So let's call super. I'm going to say this dot state equal to an object, and books will be an empty array just starting out. Once we get a response, we're going to do this dot set state, and basically we're just going to add the response to the component state. So books would be the response, which is an array of books. So let's go ahead and save that. So far so good, no errors. Now once we have the books in our state, whenever we call set state is going to force a re-render, so render gets called again, right? Now we know in this particular project we have 3 shelves, and in React we can pass information to other components called props, right? So for each shelf I'm going to pass a name prop and a books prop, right? Books equal. Now if you come to the response, one of them is currently reading. So let's say books equals this dot state dot books, right, which is the array of books, and I'm going to filter that by a shelf. So b.shelf, we want all the books that are on the currently reading shelf, and let's just call it currently reading, right? Let's go ahead and do that for the other 2 shelves. Got one for currently reading, want to read. What is the actual string? Let's see. Want to read. Let's go ahead and copy that. And for, let's say red, it's just red. Let's say red. Save that. Failed to compile. Unexpected token. b.shelf. Oh, we need the comparing operator. Let's do triple equal signs. You want all the books that are equal to these shelves, shelf names. Let's save that. No errors. So far so good. And the reason why we have the same books is because now inside the shelf component, when it gets rendered, we can read the props that were given to it. So instead of using hard-coded values, let's go ahead and use the curly braces sign to use JavaScript expressions inside of JSX. So inside of component, we can access props by doing this dot props. Now, what props were given? We have a name prop and a books prop. And just so you can see what props are also given, you can do component get mount. So whenever a new shell component gets mounted and rendered, we can just say log this, right? So this dot props dot name. And if we reload that, you can see currently reading, want to read, and read. And you can see the 3 console logs for each of the shelf components. We can see all the props that were passed to it. This one has 2 books. This one has 2 books. This one has 3 books, which all add up to 7, which is the same number as what we got from our get all API call right here. So far so good. Now instead of hard coding all of the books, let us go ahead and render some book components, right? So let's say this dot props dot books, right? Now for each book, let's use the map to return a book component for each of the books the shelf component was given. So let's say book and index, or let's just say key. Let's render a book component. Let's say book is book, and where you're looping with the map, you need to add a key. So key equals key. If we save that, get an error, unexpected token. Oh yeah, we cannot use semicolons. So let's re-render that. So we can see the numbers are right, but the actual book information itself is not right. And that's because our book component still has raw value. Let's go ahead and change that by replacing the raw values with what we're given. And just like the shell component, we're going to add this little method here so we can see the information that each component has. So here in the console, we can see each book. If you look inside a prop, we have that book component, that key. If you look inside a book, we have all the information we need. We have authors, and we have images, and the shelf. Everything that we need, right? So as far as authors, you can do the same thing we did in the shelf as far as looping, but to keep things nice and clean, let's say a book has more authors than the other, so it might look long. I'm just going to take the first in that array. So where it says book author, I'm just going to do this dot props dot book. Inside of the book, we have an author's property, which is an array. And I'm just going to take the first one. And for some reason, if there is none, let's just do error handling, and let's just say no author dot dot dot. So in case there's no authors, which that should be never, you can't have a book without an author. In the event that this key doesn't exist, then we're just going to render this string right here. Now for the title, same thing. We're just going to do this .props.book. What's it called? Title. So basically what I'm doing right now is just replacing all of the values that were hard-coded with what's being given, right? So we can see the titles, authors are different, right? Last thing to do is just the image and then the shelf values that they have starting out, right? This one is want to read, but it starts off with currently reading. We're going to fix that. So style width, that's good. So instead of this raw value here, what I'm going to do is use string templating. So URL, let's do what? Each book will have in images, thumbnail, right? So I'm going to use this, this .props.books.images, right? Now, if there are images, then let's do the thumbnail. Now, if that doesn't work, let's just use an empty string, right? If we save that, we have all of the book images here, right? So right now we have, let's just recap. So at the very start of the index page, we have the browser router, and we wrapped the main I component around the browser router. We organize our project by creating a components folder. The way I did it was create a pages folder inside components that I can use to mount certain page components to certain routes, right? And pretty much just abstracted away repetitive code to its own components and pretty much linked them together as far as pages using the link from the React router. And on the main page, we pulled the books from the backend API, right? So we have that so far. Just a few more things inside of book. We have the shelf property right here that we have to assign to the select, right? So let's say value equals this .props.book.shelf, right? If this exists, we're going to use that value, or we're going to use none, right? And the reason why I do this often is so there's error handling, because what if there was no shelf property, you know, like it'll probably cause an error. So that's why I do that. It's important to leave the move option disabled because there is no move shelf, right? So we have that. So far, so good. If we refresh the page, we can see you provide a value prop to a form field without an on-change handler. This will render a read-only field. If the field should be mutable, default value. otherwise set either unchanged. So we didn't get to that. Pretty much you're just complaining that we haven't set up a change method that will allow us to interact with this input element. And we're going to do that. But so far, if you look at books under the currently reading shelf, we can see how the currently reading. If we look at books under the want to read shelf, they start off with want to read. Same thing for read, they start off with read, right? Now, let's go to our search page. It's working. Let's start with the main page, right? Now, there are multiple ways as far as updating the shelf. There are multiple ways to do it. You can write the logic inside the book component. Technically, since books can manage their own shelf information, or you can add the method here and just pass that method as a prop to the shelf, and then to the book, right? There are multiple ways of doing it. So let's just do it. Let me, there are multiple ways of doing it. So let me just do it this way. So if I add a method here that will handle the book updating the shelf, I would have to pass as a prop to shelf. And then from shelf, I would have to pass as a prop to the book component. So that's a lot of things being passed, right? I could add the method here, right? It will update its own shelf, right? But if other pages or parent components rely on this information as far as what shelf it's on, then that can be a problem. So let's go ahead and do it from top down as far as parent passing props. So I'm going to do it here. So I'm going to create a method in the main page called update shelf, right? Or you know what? Books can also update shelf on the search page. So technically, we don't want to repeat ourselves, because if I add it here, then I would also have to add in the search page, which is repetitive. So I guess I'm going to have to go up one level and add it to the books app component. So let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to create an update books shelf, or let's just say update book. This will accept book and shelf. And let's look at how we're going to do that. Right? Now, this is in the same level, so I'm going to have to get rid of this. So far, so good. Alright, so if you look at the API, the way we update a book is we call the update method. You pass in the book and the shelf. It's going to update on the back end and give it back the response, right? So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to call book API.updates. We want to pass in book and shelf in that specific order, because that's how the method is defined. Once we do that, let's say then. I don't really need the response, but let's just accept it anyways. I'm going to say book.shelf is equal to shelf, right? Actually, that's another problem too. Huh. You know what? I think I'm actually going to move this to the book component because this component isn't managing, it doesn't have the books in its state. It's just pretty much a starting point. So actually, let me try it that way. I'm going to move that method to the book component. So inside the book, let's just do it like this. So we have this method right here, right? Let's go ahead and actually create the constructor. Instead of referencing things directly from the props, we're going to say this.state. And let's say book will be everything. We're going to destruct the props.book, right? So whenever a new book gets created, we're just going to destruct the props book and assign it to the state, right? Now once we do that, let's go ahead and change all of this.props to this.state. Should still work. Save it. This.book equals .props. Unexpected token. Or you know what? I could just do this. Books API not defined. Okay, so let's go ahead and move that. Since we're not using it here, let's go ahead and add it here. So far, so good, right? Now, this to update book. Since this is here, I guess we can just we'll just leave that for now. Let's go ahead and fix this error right here. The on change equals we get the events. We're going to say this dot update book. Let's go ahead and update the book by calling it, and we're going to pass in e.target.volume. So technically all we need is the shelf, right? So let's just say instead of book, this dot state dot book, and we're going to pass in that shelf, which is from the event target value. Now once we get the response back, all we're going to do is just this dot set state and all we're going to do is, let's say, state. We're going to say let's copy equals state, right? State.book. And we're going to say copy that shelf will be shelf. So let's try this out and do this dot set state. Let's just go ahead and say book is copy. Save that. Don't have the errors. Now if we change the shelf, let's say we move to want to read. Update was scheduled from inside an update function. Update function should be pure with zero side effects. Soon as pointed to update or callback. So if we refresh the page, we can see that it's on this shelf. But we need to see the changes live. So, Alright, let's just go with my original thought. So I'm actually just going to add this to the main page and search page. I was trying to write code that was going to scale, but I guess that's beyond necessary for this project. So let me just move this and just be simple. Let's save that. I'm going to move it here. Update book will be an arrow function. We're going to update the book and shelf. Book.shelf, we'll use that. This dot set states, and let's get state. And we're going to say books will be state.books.filter, and we're going to filter out each book, and we're going to do everything that's not equal to the given book ID. And once we filter that out, we're just going to re-add it back, because at this point it will have a new shelf value. So that concat, let's save that. See how that works. If I change it to currently reading, this the update book is not a function. Alright, so we have it here. Let's go ahead and pass this to the shelf. This is the update book. Let's go ahead and pass these down to the shelves. And from the shelves, let's go ahead and pass these to the books. Inside the book, we're going to have to call this props update book with this props book. You can do that. Let's go ahead and change this back to props. My experiment didn't work out the way I thought it would. Props. You can go ahead and get rid of these. Don't need it. Let's go ahead and let's say currently reading. That didn't work out. It did. Oh, yes. Let's change that. Now let's say currently reading. Move this to red. Move this to want to read. Alright, so that's working. What now? So I know we're gonna need this inside the search page. Let me go ahead and do that. Also, I'm going to do this as well. Just copy component amount, get all the books. I know I'm going to have my books, and then let's say results from, let's say, a query. All right, so books API. Let's go ahead and copy that. Save that. So the main page is working, shelves are moving, all that's working. If we move to none, they're not in any of these shelves, right? If we refresh the page, we can see we're going to get 6. So let's go ahead into the search component or the search page. Now here we're going to need to update the query every time we type some characters into the search input. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me just save some time. I'm going to go into my old folder here. Let me go to source, components, search page, and let me just copy a few of these here. Let me explain what's going on. Let me copy that here, copy these methods, paste it here, and let's copy this. The search page. Guess I can copy this. And let's just do that. Alright, so this was just an old one I already had ready. Let me just explain everything I copied over. So inside the render method, we added a value prop or value attribute to this input, which will be this.state.query. And every time we change it, for example, just typing new characters into it, we're going to call this.update query, passing in the new event target value. That update query method will pretty much change the state or update the state. And as a callback, once the re-render finishes, or once this finishes, is going to call this.submit search. This is going to check if the query is empty or undefined. If it is, we're just going to empty out our results list. If not, we're going to search the query. And if we get a response error, we're just going to clear the results list. Else, we're going to set the results to that list. So if we save that, we have failed. Book is not defined. Alright, so let's go ahead and fix that. Copy that over, go to search page, and import book, which is on one level above this one. Save that. Alright, now if we were to, let's say, search for H, we have all of these books here, and if we, let's say, this one is none, 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 because I'm not reading any of these books. Let's try searching for a book I am reading. Let's say Linux, which is red. So if I come down here and search L, we get an error. Cannot read property 0 of undefined, right? So if you look, go up at the response, authors, cannot read property 0 of undefined. So one of these books doesn't have an author. Either that or there's an error in my code. I can't believe I'm really going through each of them. Huh. This one does not have an author. Interesting. Okay, so let's go ahead and fix that. In our book component, we're going to say this dot authors and author 0 or no authors. So let's try it again. If I search L, alright, so works. Yay, error handling. And we can see some of these doesn't have images, right? So there's error handling for you. Now, if we were to search for what? Linux, none, none, none. Which is weird because we should be reading one of them, right? So how do we fix that? Well, we know at this point, when we get our results back, we have our results and we have our own books, right? So before we set the state, let's go ahead and let's say response that's let's say for each of these books inside the response, we're going to say B, and we're going to do a check. Let's say let's F, which I'm going to say find, equals this dot state dot books dot filter. Now let's say capital B, so it can be different from this. Let's say B ID is equal to the book from our response. If our book has an ID that's equal from the one in the response, right? Now let's go ahead and log F, and let's see. So let's say what? Linux. So we can see this was line what? 44. So 44, 44, 44. Line empty ones, and we can see this one right here. There's a match, right? Right here. But shelf says red, right? So this is coming from our books, not results, but our books. So let's say b.shelf equals F if there is a result, right? We're going to say f.shelf or let's just say null. And the reason I'm saying null is because inside our book component, if we don't have a shelf property, it's going to default to the value none. And that's the reason why I'm setting it to null. I'm setting it to falsy on purpose. So by the time the book gets that value or that book's property, if it doesn't see shelf, it's going to default to none. So let's go ahead and try that out, right? If you search for Linux, we see none, none, none. Res dot for each book. Let f b.shelf equals f 0, f.shelf of none. That should have worked. Let's try something else. If log match let's try this out. Let's say Linux. So we got one match, right? So we're inside the loop. If you get a match, let's just say b.shelf is equal to this dot shelf. Now let's say what h or that's a currently reading. This dot props to update book is not a function. This dot props to update book. Okay, so search page, let's go ahead and pass that prop. Let's go ahead and pass that prop. Let's try it out now. Book is not defined. Save that. Let's say h or currently reading. This dot props of the book. Let's try this out. Currently reading. Let's move it to currently reading. Come back. We see it here, currently reading. Let's go back and search for horror. And there, currently reading. None, none, currently reading. Right? Let's try searching for satire, which is want to read. There, want to read. So why doesn't the Linux one work? We search for Linux. Red, none, none. Oh, okay, it's working. So, if that, and I think we're done here. I think we're done here. So let's start from the top. I can move shelves here, move them. Currently reading, none. Lords of Finance. Well, actually, I do want to read that. React, none. Let's say, let's type in H. Let's say red, right? Go back, we see it here. Come back and search for H again. We have currently reading, read, none, none, none. All right, so I think we're done here. We go to the rubric. Is the application easy to install? I'm pretty sure it is. We have a README. I'm not going to do that because I already did it. And you students can write your own trials and tribulations inside your README file. Just replace everything with your own. So pretty much that's done. The main page have 3 categories or bookshelves for books, right? We have all 3. Does the main page allow users to move books between shelves? I can do that. Now, does information persist between page refreshes? It does, because I'm not re-rendering it until we update the book on the back end. We're only going to update it on the front end if there's no errors on the back end. So it does persist. Search page. Does the search have a search input that users can search? We can go to search page, search indefinitely. If you get the errors, empty query or no results, we just get nothing no matter what. Because of our error handling, we get results and nothing. So that works. To search results allow users to categorize the book as one of the 3 values. It does. So we have the drop down. We can change shelves from here. Do selections made on search page show up on the main page? So let's say if I do fitness and I say read it already and come back to the main page, we see it here. And the reason why it works is because we mounted the page components to these routes. And whenever you change routes, the component didn't mount gets called again, right? So every time we come back to the page, it's going to call this right here and just get everything in the back end. So that's working. Search page done. Routing. Does main page link to search page? It does. Does search page link back to main page? It does. Right? Now, code functionality. Does the project code handle state management properly? So we're passing down state and props, and we're only using set state. We're not mutating state directly. So this passes. Does the code run without errors? It does without errors, right? Now the last thing I'll say is before you turn in your projects, just clear up all console log statements, right? You don't want to clutter it up. Let's go ahead and do that for this one. Clear up the log statements here. Let's clear up the one inside of defendant books, and let's clear this. If we refresh the page, no log statements, and we're good. Good to go. So this project is done. I hope this tutorial is helpful. I know it took a really long time. I'm going to create a short version. Pretty much in the short version, I'm going to use the same exact project, but instead of actually walking through each of them and seeing how I did it, I'm just going to give a brief overview, just consolidate all of the talking points for a broad overview. So with that, I hope this interview helps. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys later. And I will move on to the next, which will be Project 7, walkthrough using Leaflet Map React. So take care, students. Have a good day.